All right, hello, Northwest. We are about to start reading the second chapter of Sea of Monsters. So I'm just starting it up a little early for the no one that's out there right now. Have a sip of my Coke Zero. Thought I'd give you a little change in pace in terms of the exciting backdrop, and hopefully the birds and other animals will not be too much to listen to. Okay, because this is oh so professionally done. Great. All right. So we're going to start in about 4 minutes at noon. And by now, you should have been able to contact and speak with any of your teachers through their various online platforms, Google Classroom, Canvas, things like that. If you do not or don't know how to get in touch with your teachers, just please email them and they will email you back. We are asking all the teachers to check in with you guys at least once a week while we're preparing for more there is. And Mr. Jacoby is calling me right now on the phone, so I'm going to answer it really quickly, which will be such exciting Facebook Live. Hey, hey, I'm good. I'm actually about to read Chapter 2, Sea of Monsters, on Facebook Live to the Northwest kids. So can I call you back in about 15 minutes? It'll be 16 and a half, and I'm going to put you on speaker so you can say hello to all the students. So hold on one sec. All right, this is Mr. Jacoby. Oop, there's his number. Don't pay attention to it. Go ahead.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Well, they can't actually talk back to you, but I'm
Oh,
sure they're glad to hear
okay.
you.
Well, guys, I hope you're doing some reading. I hope you're enjoying yourself. Guys, stay safe. Don't do anything silly. Um, do as much as you can so you can keep up with everything. And hopefully, in a couple of weeks, we'll be back at school. So I'll see you then.
I don't think I could have said it any better myself. So I'll give you a call in a little bit. Bye. All right. So we're about 2 minutes from the excitement. Time for another sip of Coke Zero. For those of you that are very heavy on social media these days, which is, I guess, understandable, please make sure that your parents are kept in the loop on stuff's going on. Things can get really intense when your only way of communicating with somebody is through your phone. Maybe you should try some old-fashioned talking to people on the phone as opposed to just texting. But remember that we are literally all in this together, and we're doing this all in this together apart. So there you go. Okay. So Sea of Monsters, which I'm going to start reading in a minute. As you can see, this is a very beat up copy of Sea of Monsters because both my children read it. And they're big fans. We're not huge fans of the movie. There are parts of the first movie that are pretty good. Um, but overall, this is one of those situations where the book is definitely better. Okay. Middle schoolers, don't forget to eat lunch. You know how I feel about that. You need to take care of yourself, especially now when you might be a little cooped up. We'll probably, at some point, do some exercises as well, although not during the reading. There's a lot you can do in your home. You want to stay fit, you want to stay healthy, and you want to enjoy the time you have. And before we get back. All right, so we are counting down right now to noon. And that is going to be in about 30 seconds. I know the excitement is palpable. So I will sum up that yesterday in chapter 1, Percy had a bad dream about his best friend, the satyr, who is running from a monster and is worried about something that's about to happen. And his mom had a somewhat mysterious conversation about him not being able to potentially go back to Camp Half-Blood because of something that is going on. This is the last day of class for Percy, and we know from book 1 that Percy has never gotten through a full year of school. So we're going to see if he can this year. Okay, so Chapter 2. I play dodgeball with cannibals. My day started normal, or as normal as it ever gets at Meriwether College Prep. See, it's this progressive school in downtown Manhattan, which means we sit on beanbag chairs instead of at desks, and we don't get grades, and the teachers wear jeans and rock concert t-shirts to work. That's all cool with me. I mean, I'm ADHD and dyslexic like most half-bloods, so I'd never done that great in regular school, even before they kicked me out. The only bad thing about Meriwether was that the teachers always looked on the bright side of things, and the kids weren't always, well, bright. Take my first class today, English. The whole middle school had read this book called Lord of the Flies, where all the kids get marooned on an island and go psycho. So for our final exam, our teacher sent us into the break yard to spend an hour with no adult supervision to see what would happen. What happened was a massive wedgie contest between the 7th and 8th graders, 2 pebble fights, and a full tackle basketball game. The school bully, Matt Sloan, led most of these activities. Sloan wasn't big or strong, but he acted like he was. He had eyes like a pit bull and shaggy black hair, and he always dressed in expensive but sloppy clothes, like he wanted everybody to see how little he cared about his father's money. One of his front teeth was chipped from the time he'd taken his daddy's Porsche for a joyride and run into a "please slow down for children" sign. Anyway, Sloan was giving everyone wedgies, until he made the mistake of trying it on my friend Tyson. Tyson was the only homeless kid at Meriwether College Prep. As near as my mom and I could figure, he'd been abandoned by his parents when he was very young, probably because he was so different. He was 6'3" and built like the abominable snowman, but he cried a lot and was scared of just about everything, including his own reflection. His face was kind of misshapen and brutal looking. I couldn't tell you what color his eyes were because I could never make myself look higher than his crooked teeth. His voice was deep, but he talked funny, like a much younger kid, I guess because he'd never gone to school before coming to Meriwether. He wore tattered jeans, grimy size 20 sneakers, and a plaid flannel shirt with holes in it. He smelled like a New York City alleyway because that's where he lived, in a cardboard refrigerator box off 72nd Street. Meriwether Prep had adopted him as a community service project so all the students could feel good about themselves. Unfortunately, most of them couldn't stand Tyson. Once they discovered he was a big softy, despite his massive strength and his scary looks, they made themselves feel good by picking on him. I was pretty much his only friend, which meant he was my only friend. My mom had complained to the school a million times that they weren't doing enough to help him. She called social services, but nothing ever seemed to happen. The social workers claimed Tyson didn't exist. They swore up and down they'd visited the alley we described and couldn't find him. Although how you miss a giant kid living in a refrigerator box, I don't know. Anyway, Matt Sloan snuck up behind him and tried to give him a wedgie, and Tyson panicked. He swatted Sloan a little too hard. Sloan flew 15 feet and got tangled in the little kid's tire swing. "You freak!" Sloan yelled. "Why don't you go back to your cardboard box?" Tyson started sobbing. He sat down on the jungle gym so hard he bent the bar and buried his head in his hands. "Take it back, Sloan," I shouted. Sloan just sneered at me. "Why do you even bother, Jackson? You might have friends if you weren't always sticking up for that freak." I balled my fists. I hoped my face wasn't as red as it felt. "He's not a freak. He's just—" I tried to think of the right thing to say, but Sloan wasn't listening. He and his big ugly friends were too busy laughing. I wondered if it was my imagination or if Sloan had more goons hanging around him than usual. I was used to seeing him with 2 or 3, but today he had like half a dozen more, and I was pretty sure I'd never seen them before. "Just wait till PE, Jackson," Sloan called. "You are so dead." When first period ended, our English teacher, Mr. DeMilo, came out to inspect the carnage. He pronounced that we'd understood Lord of the Flies perfectly. We all passed his course, and we should never ever grow up to be violent people. Matt Sloan nodded earnestly, then gave me a chip-tooth grin. I had to promise to buy Tyson an extra peanut butter sandwich at lunch to help get him to stop sobbing. I I am a freak?" he asked me. "No," I promised, gritting my teeth. "Matt Sloan is the freak." Tyson sniffled. "You are a good friend. Miss you next year if I can't." His voice trembled. I realized he didn't know if he'd be invited back next year for the community service project. I wondered if the headmaster had even bothered talking to him about it. "Don't worry, big guy," I managed. "Everything's gonna be fine." Tyson gave me such a grateful look, I felt like a big liar. How could I promise a kid like him that anything would be fine? Our next exam was science. Mrs. Tesla told us that we had to mix chemicals until we succeeded in making something explode. Tyson was my lab partner. His hands were way too big for the tiny vials we were supposed to use. He accidentally knocked a tray of chemicals off the counter and made an orange mushroom cloud in the trash can. After Mrs. Tesla evacuated the lab and called the hazardous waste removal squad, she praised Tyson and me for being natural chemists. We were the first ones who'd ever aced her exam in under 30 seconds. I was glad the morning went fast because it kept me from thinking too much about my problems. I couldn't stand the idea that something might be wrong at camp. Even worse, I couldn't shake the memory of my bad dream. I had a terrible feeling that Grover was in danger. In social studies, while we were drawing latitude-longitude maps, I opened my notebook and stared at the photo inside. My friend Annabeth on vacation in Washington, D.C. She was wearing jeans and a denim jacket over her orange Camp Half-Blood t-shirt. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a bandana. She was standing in front of the Lincoln Memorial with her arms crossed, looking extremely pleased with herself, like she'd personally designed the place. See, Annabeth wants to be an architect when she grows up, so she's always visiting famous monuments and stuff. She's weird that way. She'd email me the picture after spring break, and every once in a while I'd look at it just to remind myself she was real and Camp Half-Blood wasn't just my imagination. I wished Annabeth were here. She'd know what to make of my dream. I never admit it to her, but she was smarter than me, even if she was annoying sometimes. I was about to close my notebook when Matt Sloan reached over and ripped the photo out of the rings. Hey, I protested. Sloan checked out the picture and his eyes got wide. No way, Jackson. Who is that? She is not your... Give it back. My ears felt hot. Sloan handed the photo back to his ugly buddies, who snickered and started ripping it up to make spitwads. They were new kids who must have been visiting because they were all wearing those stupid, "Hi, my name is" tags from the admissions office. They must have had a weird sense of humor too, because they'd all filled in strange names like Marrow Sucker, and Skull Eater, and Joe Bob. No human beings had names like that. These guys are moving here next year, Sloan bragged, like that was supposed to scare me. I bet they can pay the tuition too, unlike your retard friend. He's not retarded. I had to try really, really hard not to punch Sloan in the face. You're such a loser, Jackson. Good thing I'm going to put you out of your misery next period. His huge buddies chewed up my photo. I wanted to pulverize them, but I was under strict orders from Chiron never to take my anger out on regular mortals, no matter how obnoxious they were. I had to save my fighting for monsters. Still, part of me thought, if Sloan only knew who I really was. The bell rang. As Tyson and I were leaving class, a girl's voice whispered, Percy. I looked around the locker area, but nobody was paying me any attention. Like any girl at Merriweather would ever be caught dead calling my name. Before I had time to consider whether or not I'd been imagining things, a crowd of kids rushed for the gym, carrying Tyson and me along with them. It was time for PE. Our coach had promised us a free-for-all dodgeball game, and Matt Sloan had promised to kill me. The gym uniform at Merriweather is sky blue shorts and tie-dyed t-shirts. Unfortunately, we did most of our athletic stuff inside, so we didn't have to jog through Tribeca looking like a bunch of boot camp hippie children. I changed as quickly as I could in the locker room because I didn't want to deal with Sloan. I was about to leave when Tyson called, Percy? He hadn't changed yet. He was standing by the weight room door, clutching his gym clothes. Will you, uh, oh yeah. I tried not to sound aggravated about it. Yeah, sure, man. Tyson ducked inside the weight room. I stood guard outside the door while he changed. I felt kind of awkward doing this, but he asked me to most days. I think it's because he's completely hairy, and he's got weird scars on his back that I've never had the courage to ask him about. Anyway, I learned the hard way that if people teased Tyson while he was dressing out, he'd get upset and start ripping the doors off lockers. When we got into the gym, Coach Nunley was sitting at his little desk reading Sports Illustrated. Nunley was about a million years old, with bifocals and no teeth and a greasy wave of gray hair. He reminded me of the Oracle at Camp Half-Blood, which was a shriveled up mummy, except Coach Nunley moved a lot less, and he never billowed green smoke. Well, at least not that I'd observed. Matt Sloan said, Coach, can I be captain? Eh? Coach Nunley looked up from his magazine. Yeah, he mumbled. Mm-hmm. Sloan grinned and took charge of the picking. He made me the other team's captain, but it didn't matter who I picked, because all the jocks and the popular kids moved over to Sloan's side. So did the big group of visitors. On my side, I had Tyson, Corey Baylor, the computer geek, Raj Mandali, the calculus whiz, and a half dozen other kids who always got harassed by Sloan and his gang. Normally, I would have been okay with just Tyson, He was worth half a dozen all by himself. But the visitors on Sloane's team were almost as tall and strong looking as Tyson, and there were 6 of them. Matt Sloane spilled a cage full of balls in the middle of the gym. Scared, Tyson mumbled. Smell funny. I looked at him. What smells funny? Because I didn't figure he was talking about himself. Them, Tyson pointed at Sloane's new friends. Smell funny. The visitors were cracking their knuckles, eyeing us like it was slaughter time. I couldn't help wondering where they were from. Somewhere where the kids got fed raw meat and beat them with sticks. Sloane blew the coach's whistle and the game began. Sloane's team ran for the center line. On my side, Raj Mandali yelled something in Urdu, probably, I have to go potty, and ran for the exit. Corey Baylor tried to crawl behind the wall mat and hide. The rest of my team did their best to cower in fear and not look like targets. Tyson, I said, let's go! A ball slammed into my gut. I sat down hard in the middle of the gym floor. The other team exploded in laughter. My eyesight was fuzzy. I felt like I'd just gotten the Heimlich maneuver from a gorilla. I couldn't believe anybody could throw that hard. Tyson yelled, Percy, duck! I rolled as another dodgeball whistled past my ear at the speed of sound. Boom! It hit the wall mat and Corey Baylor yelped. Hey, I yelled at Sloane's team. You could kill somebody. The visitor named Joe Bob grinned at me evilly. Somehow he looked a lot bigger now, even taller than Tyson. His biceps bulged beneath his t-shirt. I hope so, Perseus Jackson. I hope so. The way he said my name sent a chill down my back. Nobody called me Perseus except those who knew my true identity, friends and enemies. What had Tyson said? They smell funny? Monsters. All around Matt Sloane, the visitors were growing in size. They were no longer kids. They were 8-foot tall giants with wide eyes, pointy teeth, and hairy arms tattooed with snakes and hula women and Valentine's heart. Matt Sloane dropped his ball. Whoa, you're not from Detroit? Who? The other kids on his team started screaming and backing towards the exit, but the giant named Marrowsucker threw a ball with deadly accuracy. It streaked past Raj Mandali just as he was about to leave and hit the door, slamming it shut like magic. Raj and some of the other kids banged on it desperately, but it wouldn't budge. Let them go, I yelled at the giants. The one called Joe Bob growled at me. He had a tattoo on his bicep that said, JB loves baby cakes. And lose our tasty morsels? No, son of the sea god. We Lastrygonians aren't just playing for your death. We want lunch. He waved his hand and a new batch of dodgeballs appeared on the center line, but these balls weren't made of red rubber. They were bronze, the size of cannonballs, perforated like wiffle balls with fire bubbling out the holes. They must have been searing hot, but the giants picked them up with their bare hands. Coach! I yelled. Nunley looked up sleepily, but if he saw anything abnormal about the dodgeball game, he didn't let on. That's the problem with mortals. A magical force called the mist obscures the true appearance of monsters and gods from their vision, so mortals only tend to see what they can understand. Maybe the coach saw a few 8th graders pounding the younger kids, like usual. Maybe the other kids saw Matt Sloane's thugs getting ready to toss Molotov cocktails around. It wouldn't have been the first time. At any rate, I was pretty sure nobody else realized we were dealing with genuine man-eating, bloodthirsty monsters. Yeah, Coach muttered. Play nice. And he went back to his magazine. The giant named Skull Eater threw his ball. I dove aside as the fiery bronze comet sailed past my shoulder. Corey! I screamed. Tyson pulled him out from behind the exercise mat just as the ball exploded against it, blasting the mat to smoking shreds. Run! I told my teammates. The other exit! They ran for the locker room, but another wave of Joe Bob's hands and the door slammed shut. No one leaves unless you're out, Joe Bob roared. And you're not out until we eat you. He launched his own fireball. My teammates scattered as it blasted a crater in the gym floor. I reached for Riptide, which I always kept in my pocket. Then I realized I was wearing gym shorts. I had no pockets. Riptide was tucked into my jeans inside my gym locker, and the locker door was sealed. I was completely defenseless. Another fireball came streaking towards me. Tyson pushed me out of the way, but the explosion still blew me head over heels. I found myself sprawled on the gym floor, dazed from smoke, my tie-dyed t-shirt peppered with sizzling holes. Just across the center line, 2 hungry giants were glaring down at me. Flesh, they bellowed. Hero flesh for lunch. They both took aim. Percy needs help, Tyson yelled, and he jumped in front of me just as they threw their balls. Tyson! I screamed, but it was too late. Both balls slammed into him. But no, he'd caught them. Somehow Tyson, who was so clumsy he knocked over lab equipment and broke playground structures on a regular basis, had caught two fiery metal balls speeding towards him at a zillion miles an hour. He sent them hurtling back towards their surprised owners, who screamed, "Bad!" as the bronze spheres exploded against their chests. The giants disintegrated in twin columns of flame, a sure sign they were monsters, all right. Monsters don't die. They just dissipate into smoke and dust, which saves heroes a lot of trouble cleaning up after a fight. My brothers, Joe Bob the cannibal wailed. He flexed his muscles and his baby cakes tattoo rippled. You'll pay for their destruction. Tyson, I said, look out! Another comet hurled towards us. Tyson just had time to swat it aside. It flew straight over Coach Nunley's head and landed in the bleachers with a huge kaboom. Kids were running around screaming, trying to avoid the sizzling craters in the floor. Others were banging on the door, calling for help. Sloane himself stood petrified in the middle of the court, watching in disbelief as balls of death flew around him. Coach Nunley still wasn't seeing anything. He tapped his hearing aid like the explosions were giving him interference, but he kept his eyes on the magazine. Surely the whole school could hear the noise. The headmaster, the police, somebody would come help us. Victory will be ours, roared Joe Bob the cannibal. We will feast on your bones. I wanted to tell him he was taking the dodgeball game way too seriously. But before I could, he hefted another ball. The other three giants followed his lead. I knew we were dead. Tyson couldn't deflect all those balls at once. His hands had to be seriously burned from blocking the first volley. Without my sword, I had a crazy idea. I ran towards the locker room. Move, I told my teammates. Away from the door. Explosions behind me. Tyson had batted two of the balls back towards their owners and blasted them to ashes. That left two giants still standing. A third ball hurled straight at me. I forced myself to wait. One Mississippi, two Mississippi, then dove aside as a fiery sphere demolished the locker room door. Now I figured that the built-up gas in most boys' locker room was enough to cause an explosion, so I wasn't surprised when the flaming dodgeball ignited a huge whoom. The wall blew apart. Locker doors, socks, athletic supporters, and other various nasty personal belongings rained all over the gym. I turned just in time to see Tyson punch Skull Eater in the face. The giant crumpled. But the last giant, Joe Bob, had wisely held on to his own ball, waiting for an opportunity. He threw just as Tyson was turning to face me. No! I yelled. The ball caught Tyson square in the chest. He slid the length of the court and slammed into the back wall, which cracked and partially crumbled on top of him, making a hole right onto Church Street. I didn't see how Tyson could still be alive, but he only looked dazed. The bronze ball was smoking at his feet. Tyson tried to pick it up, but he fell back stunned into a pile of cinder blocks. Well, Joe Bob gloated, I'm the last one standing. I'll have enough meat to bring baby cakes a doggy bag. He pulled up another ball and aimed it at Tyson. Stop, I yelled. It's me you want. The giant grinned. You wish to die first, young hero? I had to do something. Riptide had to be around here somewhere. Then I spotted my jeans in a smoking heap of clothes right by the giant's feet. If I could only get there. I knew it was hopeless, but I charged. The giant laughed. My lunch approaches. He raised his arm to throw. I braced myself to die. Suddenly the giant's body went rigid. His expression changed from gloating to surprise. Right where his belly button should have been, his t-shirt ripped open, and he grew something like a horn. No, not a horn. The glowing tip of a blade. The ball dropped out of his hand. The monster stared down at the knife that had just run him through from behind. He muttered, oh, and burst into a cloud of green flame, which I was pretty sure was going to make baby cakes upset. Standing in the smoke was my friend Annabeth. Her face was grimy and scratched. She had a ragged backpack slung over her shoulder, her baseball cap tucked in her pocket, a bronze knife in her hand, and a wild look in her storm gray eyes, like she'd been chased 1,000 miles by ghosts. Matt Sloane, who'd been standing there dumbfounded the whole time, finally came to his senses. He blinked at Annabeth as if he dimly recognized her from my notebook picture. That's the girl. That's the girl. Annabeth punched him in the nose and knocked him flat. And you, she told him, lay off my friend. The gym was in flames. Kids were still running around screaming. I heard sirens wailing and a garbled voice over the intercom. Through the glass windows of the exit door, I could see the headmaster, Mr. Bonsai, wrestling with the lock, a crowd of teachers piling up behind him. Annabeth, I stammered. How long have you? Pretty much all morning, she sheathed her bronze knife. I've been trying to find a good time to talk to you, but you were never alone. The shadow I saw that morning, that was, oh my God, you were looking in my bedroom window. There's no time to explain, she snapped, although she looked a little red-faced. I just didn't want to. There, a woman screamed. The doors burst open and the adults came pouring in. Meet me outside, Annabeth told him. And him, she pointed to Tyson, who was still sitting dazed against the wall. Annabeth gave him a look of distaste, but I didn't quite understand. You better bring him. What? No time, she said. Hurry. She put on her Yankees baseball cap, which was a magic gift from her mom, and instantly vanished. That left me standing alone in the middle of the burning gymnasium, where the headmaster came charging in with half the faculty and a couple of police officers. Percy Jackson? Mr. Bonsai said. What? How? Over by the broken wall, Tyson groaned and stood up from the pile of cinder blocks. It hurts. Mad Sloan was coming around too. He focused on me with a look of terror. Percy did it, Mr. Bonsai. He set the whole building on fire. Coach Nunley will tell you. He saw it all. Coach Nunley had been dutifully reading his magazine, but just my luck, he chose that moment to look up when Sloan said his name. Eh? Yeah. The other adults turned towards me. I knew they would never believe me, even if I could tell them the truth. I grabbed Riptide out of my ruined jeans, told Tyson, come on, and jumped through the gaping hole in the side of the building. And that is chapter 2 of Percy Jackson. So we'll be back tomorrow at noon. Please stay in touch with your teachers. Most of you are doing that through Google Classroom and Canvas and Remind, but just make sure that you're checking on them the way they're checking on you. We're going to post, this will be up, of course, for people to watch later on. And we're going to keep a copy of the video that we'll send out to people who don't have Facebook Live. So take care of yourselves, take care of your brothers and your sisters, take care of mom and dad and all your relatives. And in the end, we're all going to be heroes like Percy and get through this. So I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.